I used to be the teacher who moved your child's clip down. I took away recess, I used timeouts, I threatened consequences, I yelled, I moved kids to the back of the line, had them stand instead of sit, and yes, I absolutely used the whole, if one person can't behave, the whole class is going to lose recess. And that is really uncomfortable to admit now. I'm Amy, a former special educator turned homeschool mom, and I help homeschool parents of kids with big behaviors understand what's really driving those behaviors so they can create calmer days and more cooperation at home. This week, I'm sharing a little more of my own story, and to understand why I parent and coach and teach the way I do today, you need to know that I did not start here. When I walked into my first grade classroom as a young teacher, I believed being a good teacher meant being able to control my classroom. I was focused on getting children to do what I wanted them to do and when I wanted them to do it. And I knew a lot about teaching. I had a degree. I had learned instructional methods and some classroom management and behavior systems and lesson planning, but no one had really taught me to look deeply at the child in front of me. So when a child wasn't doing what I expected, I looked at the behavior. I looked at the compliance. I looked at whether my lesson was getting done and whether I was maintaining control. I wasn't asking nearly enough, what is getting in the way of this child being able to do what I'm asking? And a few years into teaching, that started to change. I began looking at the child instead of only looking at the behavior. And once I did, a lot of what I believed about discipline started to crumble. Eventually, I moved into special education and spent 6 years teaching children with autism, ADHD, cognitive disabilities, and some really big behaviors. And those kids challenged me to keep asking harder questions about regulation and behavior and relationships and skills and what children actually needed from the adults leading them. And I wish I could tell you that once I started learning those things, I immediately became a completely different teacher. But I didn't. I was learning about regulation while still struggling to regulate myself. I was beginning to understand connection while still falling back into control. And I was developing new beliefs while old beliefs were still deeply ingrained. There are things I did early in my teaching career that I wouldn't do today, and I've had to learn how to hold that truth without either shaming that younger version of myself or excusing everything she did. I can give her grace for what she didn't know and still take responsibility for what she did. I can recognize how deeply she cared about children while acknowledging that caring about children didn't automatically mean I always knew how to meet their needs. And I can be incredibly thankful that previous me was willing to change, because that's really the thread that connects the teacher I was then to the parent and coach and educator that I am now. I kept looking at the child. I kept asking questions, and I let what I learned change me. If you're homeschooling a child with big behaviors and you're trying to understand what's really driving them, follow along for more support and stick around this week because I'm sharing a little more of my story and how I got here.